So speaking of 10, the top 10, and depending on your list, in this range are going Lamar Chase, Cooper Kupp, Devonte Adams, Justin Jefferson, Stephen Diggs, CeeDee Lamb, Mike Evans, Keenan Allen, Michael Pittman, and then I've got T. Higgins in here. But we'll get to that in a minute. We'll start with Cooper Kupp and Jefferson. They're going potentially they're going in the first round, and they kind of flip back and forth depending on which one goes first. Average draft position, they're about the same. It's your preference, essentially. Overall, then... Yeah, overall. So then Chase is then the next one very close. So you got Kupp and Jefferson going in the first very early. Chase is kind of sneaky into that first round, depending on the team's, the league length. But usually he's going very high in the second. The rest of those guys in that 10 we just talked about are going in that second to third round kind of tier, and there's anywhere from, say, 15 through to 30. So on this list, I think the guy that probably I like the most with super undervalued is Keenan Allen. He's been excellent there, had a huge amount of receptions. Definitely a lock for for wide receiver 1 there at the Chargers. He will get a lot of ball. And he's great value in that third round. He's kind of going there as, as wide receiver like 8, 9 or 10, depending what list you look at. So he's, kind of floating in that round. I think that's great value. And if you can pick him up in the third, maybe even as your first wide receiver, if you've gone to running backs, still you're getting great value there, and you can be happy with that. That kind of leads us, I guess, into Higgins, which is interesting because depending what list you look at, anywhere from 9 through to 12 is kind of where he's floating. But he's the first wide receiver 2 on this list. But he kind of gets wide receiver 1 type looks with the Bengals, considering how much they pass the ball and score touchdowns, etc. There, he did have over 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns last year.
So you reckon the Bengals can still have enough production between Chase and Higgins to make them both very
Tyler
viable?
Boyd's probably even viable there as well. Like they're the way they play football is volume passing. So yes, I think he's definitely got lots of looks. Is he top 10 in fantasy wide receivers? Well, he was wide receiver 22 last year. Like I said, he's going wide receiver 12 roughly. Depending on lists, as I said, up to 9. But it kind of depends on the order. And I think you threw in there Tyrek Hill and AJ Brown as questions. Hill was 6 last year, wide receiver 6. AJ Brown was 32, but was hurt.
Hurt for about 6 games.
Yeah, so you can weigh that up.
Will be wide receiver 1 at Philly.
Yeah. And Higgins, was 22. So, kind of in between the two of them. Hill is interesting kind of conversation. We'll get to him in a minute. But you got to weigh up. He's now at Miami and doesn't have, the freak, the alien that is Mahomes, throwing him 100-plus receptions.
And obviously that's going to hinder you going from Mahomes to Tua Tagovailoa. Respectfully, that is a downgrade. But I just think talent-wise, I think they're going to try and really...
True, but talent doesn't win you fantasy games, so...
Yeah, that is true. That is true. I don't...
Volume and receptions always after. So.
I don't see a world where Tyreek Hill scores less fantasy points than T. Higgins this year.
Oh, as a comparison, probably not. But you just got to weigh up potential risk there that, yes, he gets fed a lot more with the Chiefs. Mahomes can throw the ball up to 50 times in a game, whereas I think Tua will probably average only 30. So, that's 20 less passes of volume, every game. And then also he's got a very good running mate there in Weddle. But, Chiefs had Kelsey. So I guess you have Kels. So I guess there's a comparison there that, they had two good wide receivers. So we'll see. And I think that's kind of reflected a little bit in Tyrek Hill's kind of value because we'll start with my little bit of fading segment. I'm very unsure about him and Weddle because he's going in the 20s. Weddle was about 40s as average kind of draft position. I'm just not sure. I'm just unsure probably more with the quarterback situation and what Tua looks like. There's some good stuff out of camp, some not so great stuff out of camp. Probably won't see a lot in preseason, so you've got to weigh up the risk of what that actually is going to look like when they get into there. So, unsure about those two purely based on quarterback play as your issue. So we'll have to see. Whereas you don't have that risk with Higgins. You know he's going to get high volume over there in Bengals.
Yep.
And, he'd probably get 100 targets again this year.
Yeah, that's a reasonable precaution. I've always been bullish on Tyrek Hill. We did have a chat last year around our top 10 receivers, and I was very big on Tyrek Hill, but it's a fair concern. To go from the Chiefs system to the Dolphins.
Yeah, and Hill maybe going in that second, early third. You can get Higgins in the third, early fourth, and you're still getting a pretty good return. You're getting like a wide receiver 2 that puts up wide receiver 1 numbers for a lot of clubs. So
and I'm not going to argue that. I'm not going to argue that, but I'm just cautious as to throwing him in that top 10 conversation in fantasy football. This year.
He's on the cusp of that. Like I said, wide receiver 12. So but depending on depending on how much you value, he potentially he and Chase could both go over 100 receptions, and God forbid anything happens to Chase, then he's going to get all the value, all the volume. So
that's something that you got to.
He's also the highest handcuff too.
Yep.
So time will tell.
Let's talk about Debo Samuel. So there's been a lot of speculation about him in the preseason, holding in and contract.
Well, got his contract.
So signed?
Yes, he got his big deal, so he will stay there. Lance looked good in the game, so this is kind of what you start way up. He's averaging in the 20s. I'm still, at this point, kind of fading him, as in I prefer to go look elsewhere, because I guess I'm still unsure of his usage. Had the complaints about playing running back. His overall scrimmage yards is what made him very valuable in fantasy last year. So if you remove a lot of that RB and he's focusing more as a wide receiver, then maybe he's not valuable at that 20 average in the 20s there as an ADP, because maybe he's more like a 30 or 40 range.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah, so
I'd be very skeptical of drafting Debo in the second round.
Yeah. And early thirds as well, potentially, because you still have questions there as Lance's quarterback, and then what his role is with that offense, what they're going to look like going forward. But so that's my concern there. Also fading Johnson from the Steelers, currently going in the 30 and 40s. We talked about it before. QB a big concern. Pickett was third, as we mentioned before. Mitch currently 1. And if Mitch Trubisky is their quarterback, I'm probably avoiding a lot of Steelers wide receivers.
Yeah, Allen Robinson says high probably of being overdrafted in fantasy and not probably producing that much.
Yeah, just risk, just scary.
There. The risk is scary. Deontay Johnson put up some pretty big numbers last year. Obviously, different quarterback situation.
Yeah, going from a Hall of Fame quarterback to a flame out.
To who knows?
Flame out to
who knows?
Flame
out. Cop that.
Yeah.
Flame out.
Yeah, or a rookie in Pickett. We'll have to see. And for that reason, I think there's other with the wide receivers and with all the classes that have come out, I mentioned before. There's just so much potential available good guys that you could pick up instead.
And that's the difference, isn't it, when we're talking receivers to talking running backs? Running backs, you've got to go hard early, whereas there's so much depth with receivers. You could probably take a punt with just about anyone in these sort of mid-draft selections. Yeah. So probably you have to consider that when you're talking about it. It's probably not as vital as
and where the league is and where some of those teams are, it's high volume passing, so wide receiver 2s are even very valuable.
Indeed.
So for that reason, a lot of the guys here in my fading segment are QB related. So Amari Cooper again, he's currently going in the 60s. I'd probably avoid without the knowledge of the quarterback situation.
Who's it going to be? Who's it going to be?
Yeah, if Watson does get a season long suspension or even a 12-game suspension that there's been chat about,
ban him for life for doing a shoey.
Do they turn to Jimmy G and maybe that alleviate some of that concern? But otherwise, they've got nothing there.
And we're also talking about a quarterback that's not on their roster at the moment.
Correct.
There's so much speculation involved here.
Yeah. And then someone like following that trend, DK, you can even throw Locke in this regards. Who knows who their quarterback's going to be?
What's the ADP on DK at the moment?
50s. He's going in the 50s, so actually higher than Cooper, I believe.
Wide receiver 21.
Yeah. So
wide receiver 21. I'd be bullish on DK here. And again, I know we just said talent doesn't win you fantasy fantasy comps, but I just think he's such a good receiver. I don't know if it's going to be Locke throwing in the ball. I don't know if it's going to be Geno Smith. I feel like he might be worth taking a punt on just in how talented a footballer
he is. But also, there's a QB risk. And I'd say if Smith's his quarterback, then I think that leads more to Tyler being more valuable there. Because
the deep threat.
Yeah, whereas Locke loves the deep ball and throwing it deep. He loves relying on his arm, which might lead better to going to DK there.
And you've seen a lot of Drew Locke as a Broncos fan.
Yeah, and he turned his rookie year with Cortland Sutton turned him basically into a wide receiver one because he could go up and get those deep balls. So looking forward to the Wilson and Sutton relationship. We'll get to that in a minute. But I think for DK that's probably the preference for quarterback, but then also, you got Locke there, who's had struggles, playing for Denver for a very long time. So, of those guys, I'd avoid them and be focused more on Brandon Cooks, who's been, I guess a forgotten man there in Houston, super underrated, but he's also been super consistent, 1,000-yard seasons after 1,000-yard seasons. Really, Nico Collins, maybe they're like they don't have a lot of other options there, so he's going to get a lot of ball thrown in his direction. Yep. So a lot of high volume his way, and David Mills hasn't been bad. That's the other thing. Like I
thought he was impressive last year, Davis Mills. Like
the neck is impressive. So
the Daily Cherry Evans of the NFL. Yes. I agree with you. I think Brandon Cooks is criminally undervalued. And
going in this range and 50s around all these guys, I'd be picking him over the other one.
And PPR. If you're in a PPR league, you're probably not going to get a whole heap of touchdowns, but probably will catch a lot of balls.
Yep.
He's kind of Jalen Waddle-esque in that, looking at that screen game, that short yardage situation, getting those 8-yard screens, PPR, thanks, 1.8 points, put it in the bank.
Yeah, well, and thank you for the segue there, because Waddle currently going in the 40s, and we talked about the concerns there with Tua, the volume. Will Hill take a lot of volume away from Waddle from what he had last year, because he really didn't have too much of a running mate over there that they could rely on consistently. So I think 40s is like high for him, considering I think Cook's probably got better value overall. So
that's too much. 4th round, 10-team league.
Yeah, or 4th or 5th round.
Yeah, I think that's a bit too eager on Jalen Waddle, considering he's wide receiver 2 under unproven quarterback. I'd rather a wide receiver 1 in Brandon Cooks under an unproven quarterback.
Yeah. Can you look up McLaurin for me, Jimmy?
What's your thoughts there?
Well, I'll get to that. We'll get him the ADP because so Mooney is the next one going.
Darnell Mooney,
going the 60s. Has a pretty good relationship from Fields. Did have a great catch today when they were both on the field. But I guess I'm in a wait and see mode with them. I want to see Fields probably will play a decent amount throughout the preseason going forward as they work him up. All accounts, he's been good in training camp. Then I've also seen a fair bit of air ball footage as well. So we'll have to see what that looks like. He'll be their number one. If there's, with no Robinson there, there's basically no real other options as well. That's such a weak wide receiver group. And I think Harry got injured as well, N'Keal Harry, during the week. So, yeah. I think he's probably good value there, but I also just want to wait and see what their quarterback situation is going to look like. If Fields kind of looking like he's taking a step in these preseason games, then I'll be more comfortable there in that 6th or 7th round for him. Where's McLaurin going?
Scary Terry. So been a favourite of you. You're highly rated, and has the numbers to back that up. Pretty. I think he's a bit unders. Do you reckon on where he's going at the moment?
What do you got there as a number?
Yeah, so he's averaging around 42.
42. So in the 40s. Yes, I think of Washington players, especially wide receivers, look at him, avoid all the others. Dotson's probably the rookie. We'll have to see what that looks like. Maybe it gives more freedom for McLaurin, but they had Heineke last year. It's going to be Wentz this year. That should be a bump there. McLaurin should take another step and got paid. So I think he's going to be a very good wide receiver this year, and I do like him compared to some of the others. Wentz is Wentz, but he's a better quarterback than Heineke was.
Exactly.
So
it's an improvement. So I can't imagine Scary Terry takes too much of a downturn. Now, have you got your blue and orange glasses on here?
Definitely.
Or are you big on Jerry Judy and Cortland Sutton?
Definitely big on them. From what I've seen and some of the scrimmage yesterday from against the Cowboys, because they've been doing joint practices, they both look excellent. And I think in this range, we're talking 60s and 50s, Judy for 60s and 50s for Sutton. They have, potentially a Hall of Fame quarterback playing for them. They have a good quarterback situation, good offensive game plan looks like going forward, a good scheme, which will utilise them. Yes, Judy's probably going to be a target man, and Sutton's going to be a deep threat, get the touchdowns. So I think do yourself a favour, avoid some of those other riskier quarterback situations and focus on this one where you'll get a lot more return on your picks here in the middle of the draft.
Do you have a preference between Judy and Sutton?
Probably depends on what else you drafted, based on what I said before. If you need a guy that gets more volume, because you've got say you picked DK beforehand, go with Judy. Whereas if you looking for a guy that probably scores more touchdowns and still going to have good value there, I'd pick Sutton. But Sutton Wilson's chemistry in camp has been very good, and same with Judy. And now with no Tim Patrick, it gives them a little bit of a bump and potential volume going their way. So I do like both of them. I think they could both be in for big seasons.
What about the best wide receiver in fantasy football a few years ago? Obviously marred by injury. We're talking about Michael Thomas.
Yeah. And, coming back from an ankle injury, which basically ruined 2 seasons for him, we'll have to see what he looks like. Training camp looks good. Probably won't play any in the preseason. Does have his quarterback back in Winston. We'll have to see what it looks like. Currently going that 60 range. So I love his quarterback situation, probably more, both healthy. That I guess is your concern here. There could be value there. Mike Thomas could be Mike Thomas of old and go back to be on pace to breaking reception records. That's what you kind of hope, and maybe in this range of that 60s in that 6th or 7th round, that's good risk. That's good value there.
I think that's it with him. It's just it's a pretty high ceiling, but also a pretty low floor.
He will be wide receiver 1. If his legs are all good, then I think that's a good run there.
The guys going ahead of him, according to fantasypros.com, Chris Godwin, Elijah Moore, Rashad Bateman, Darnell Mooney. I like Mike Thomas better than any of those receivers, to be honest, just based on that ceiling, based on that high ceiling.
Yeah, we'll look at the quarterback as well. Like they've got a better, LASIK Winston is, has improved, and he can throw the ball around all over the place. Like he's still a good quarterback, and his training videos are the best out there.
Very inspirational speaker in the huddle.
Eating them W's. So other great values.
Bit of value.
Yeah. I think St. Brown in the 60s as well.
Detroit Lions.
There. Yeah. He's going to have a lot of value until Williams probably gets involved more in that offense.
Which we're not expecting until mid-season or later for Jameson Williams.
Well, there's some earlier reports than that. He's probably not ready for week 1, but could be ready around then.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's coming forward, modern medicine, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. I talked about that in our rookie video that Williams is a very late pick in your draft, as a sneaky good one there, where he could potentially steal a lot of St. Brown's volume. But we'll see what that looks like. Either way, I think St. Brown's in for a good season and get a lot of volume there from Goff. Allen Robinson probably
at the Rams this year.
At the Rams will be wide receiver 2 to Cooper Kupp, but I'd say we've talked about. Cup probably can't.
It's going to be hard for him to reproduce.
So probably takes a step back. Robinson's going to then suck up all the volume from Woods and OBJ, and probably some of that extra there. There's probably a lot there of value, and I really like him as a wide receiver 2. Maybe he doesn't get up to T. Higgins kind of numbers, but you can potentially see a comparison there.
Yep.
Biggest issue for them is I believe Stafford's got tennis elbow. In his throwing arm, so we'll have to see. He won't play any preseason, I'd say. Rest.
Yep.
Try to take the amount of throws he's got out of his arm, so he can feel a bit healthier. Yeah, but tendonitis, I think it is, in his elbow.
the old lateral epicondylalgia is the most current up-to-date term for that. A little bit of physio chat here. You know, tennis players get affected by a tennis elbow. About 5% of this condition. Much more likely to see it in manual workers or contact sports people. Hopefully it's just a bit of, bracing and taping and some rehab, and he's good to go.
Yeah.
Any news down there, Monks?
Need some of those Deshaun Watson massages.
Will that help his elbow?
Different appendage, I believe.
Anything you go, Jimmy?
Yeah, no long-term concerns. I think, like you mentioned, just keep it easy pre-season.
Yeah. Look at these numbers from last year. Why do people sleep on this guy? Like we spoke about it, I suppose, in the quarterback, review. 41 touchdowns, 17 interceptions, nearly 5,000 yards, and a Super Bowl last year for Matt Stafford.
Yeah, and you got to remember, no Woods, no OBJ. So you got to say that's 40 touchdowns. Maybe 10 of those go Robinson's way.
Yeah,
which is huge numbers. Yep. Maybe he gets 1,000 yards.
Yeah, no,
still huge numbers.
Yeah, I like it.
In the 60s, great value there, I'd say. And then I've added Elijah Moore, and it might depend on who plays quarterback. Things have changed since early. Was it early this morning or? Yesterday. So, things can change. But Elijah Moore, by all accounts, has won the wide receiver 1 job there at the Jets, kind of beating out Wilson and
Corey Davis,
etc. So they've kind of taken second fiddle to Moore. So it would be interesting to see what his role is. I'd say it'd be high volume targets than maybe Tutter's, but he's probably going to sneak in a few touchdowns definitely there. And we'll have to see what it looks like with when Wilson gets back. But in the 70s there, 7th or 8th round pick as a wide receiver 1 with a young football team that's probably going to have a good run game, be better overall. I think that's good value there for a guy that could take a leap in his second season.
Yeah, he showed a bit of promise last year, especially towards the back end of it. Obviously, quarterback situation and the rest there, yet to be confirmed. But I think Elijah Moore, if you can get him 7th or 8th round, you've done pretty well.
And then if you keep going down that list, like Gabriel Davis is going late 70s, Lazard's going in the hundreds. Like there's still and he could be wide receiver 1.
Dude, we were speaking about this like pre-show. Yeah. I think Alan Lazard, and yes, I'm a Packers fan, but if you get him 10th round, 9th round, I reckon that's a steal.
Yeah,
like potentially could be the number 1 target for the 2-time defending MVP. Yeah. Someone's going to have to feel the big boots that were Devonte Adams. I'm not saying that Lazard picks up Devonte Adams kind of traffic, but he's going to have to get a lion's share of it. And from what I've seen in this wide receiver group, I think he's going to be the number 1 target for 12 at Green Bay. Yeah. I think that's an absolute steal.
Yeah, I agree. Because you look at the other wide receivers in that group, they're going to have a bunch of rookies.
Yep,
probably playing.
Christian Watson hasn't been available. Sammy Watkins,
Will he make the team? I think there's legitimate questions where Watkins makes the team with some of the young fellas.
Agreed. Randall Cobb, obviously.
Probably makes the team because he's
great mates with 12, but friends, so. I don't think he's going to be wide receiver 1. I think the Lizard, Alan Lazard, is a steal there if you can pick him up in, say, the 9th or 10th.
Yeah, agree. So, and then Gabriel Davis, go back to him. He's going in the 70s, an 8th-ish kind of round pick, and wide receiver 2 at the Bills. He's going to have huge volume come his way for when they play. So Emmanuel Sanders is going to take a back steep. Cole Beasley's gone. So Gabriel Davis is going to take a big leap in his second year as well, I'd say.
Did he catch 4 touchdowns in a game last year, Gabriel Davis?
Potentially.
I think there was a game where he went absolutely wild.
Maybe a game that Diggs missed.
Possibly.
So, the talent's there. He's got great size. And, if Josh Allen stays healthy all year, he's going to get, again, a lot of ball. So, you just see across the board, all the way down in the 10th round, there's wide receivers you can pick. So
Depth.
Yeah, so much depth. Some sneaky, maybe left field sleepers. Julio Jones has gone in the 160s, which is almost to undrafted territory. We'll have to see if he makes the team, but I think he should. Godwin's coming back from injury. Gage had a hurt hamstring, but it was day-to-day. So he might, sneak into that role.
Not just
I think he
might be wide receiver 2 on day 1.
which is potential. So and Tom Brady, what was it? Threw the most touchdowns and the most yards last year. Like that volume's going to go somewhere, and he really wanted
future Hall of Famer.
Really wanted Julio there in Tampa, and he's got his man. Let's see what it turns into. So huge still late there in the 160s. AJ Green's an interesting one. He's 200 plus. I think it was even 250s. Like it was really late.
How?
Yeah,
that's ridiculous.
But the question becomes, could he be wide receiver 1 in that team? No Hopkins for 6 weeks.
Brown had the driving indiscretion.
Who
last
knows
week.
what happens with Brown? Whether he'll be available week 1, and then got Isabella Moore behind him. Do they take the step? So they're resting him. Like he's not going to play preseason. He's a vet there. Potentially he could get a lot of volume to start the season before those guys get back available. It'll be really interesting to see. So I think AJ Green is a sneaky late one potentially there.
I love that. I love both Julio and AJ Green there as late round steals. They're both, talented guys, well proven in the NFL. Guys that are sort of a little bit unproven. Who's going to be the number 1 at the Kansas City Chiefs, catching balls from arguably the best quarterback in football?
Yeah, and Micah Hardman is there. Incumbent was, I guess, wide receiver 2.
Behind Tyrek.
Didn't
have numbers that
not huge numbers, but
bring the house down. But for his ADP, you don't mind it.
Yeah, well, he's going 160s at the moment, but you have to ask. You pointed it out there. Who's going to be wide receiver 1? They've got Juju and MVS, who are both ahead of Hardman, and then they've got Sky Moore, so who's the rookie. And those 4 essentially are their 4 wide receivers. That's how they've listed them in the depth chart. They've got wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, and they kind of break it down with the 2 of them there. Does Hardman? If MVS is the deep threat, is Juju going to be the wide receiver 1? I don't know. I kind of don't see it. Needs a bounce back year, has been hurt. Both of those guys going ahead of Hardman. Hardman maybe is the incumbent, has good chemistry there. But training camp's all been about Sky Moore. So Sky Moore might sneak in. I think all 3 of those are going ahead of Hardman. But, again, watch preseason. Check it out, see what it looks like. I'd be interested to know if Hardman had any numbers today from that game. And what that looks like in the preseason.
It might be the hardest to predict wide receiver room in the NFL.
Yeah, with so much upside with the quarterback.
So much upside. Obviously, they're going to be wide receiver 2 behind Travis Kelce. But a lot of potential for one of these guys, perhaps, underrated.
And I said it before, Tyrek Hill was wide receiver 6, 111 receptions, I think, last year.
There's no reason why that can't be Mecole Hardman. Similar kind of player, in fast and shifty. You saw what Juju did a few years ago. A lot of people might have had him in your top 15 wide receivers just a few years ago in the NFL. Can he, reignite his career as a Chief? Catching balls from Patrick Mahomes, who knows?
Yeah, definitely.
Anyone of note? Sky Moore played a lot yesterday, didn't he?
Yeah. So just on Hardman real quick, he got 1 target. Ran it for 9 yards, or caught it for 9 yards.
1 reception. Yeah.
Sky Moore had 3 targets, average 7.7, total 23 yards.
No Juju, no MVS?
MVS had 2 targets, caught 1 for 11 yards, and no Juju.
I think Juju's still coming back from injury. And by the sounds of that, those target numbers, I'd say Hardman and MVS started with Mahomes, and then probably went off when Mahomes finished as well. But Moore would have played more. And I guess that's the list of what I had. Did you guys have any other wide receivers that jumped out that we may not have mentioned here? Because there is a lot.
Did we talk about DJ Moore, Carolina?
No, we didn't. But again, another guy, quarterback situation.
He's going to be massive. Did we talk about Mike Williams? Chargers.
As another good wide receiver too. No, but we talked about Allen as the volume there, and I think he's a touchdown machine. So
we spoke about T. Higgins being maybe the best wide receiver too in the NFL. I think Mike Williams might have something to say about that. A lot of kudos around the Chargers offense and under Justin Herbert. I think Mike Williams might be someone to throw a bit of your draft stock.
Of those two going there, you'd pick Mike Williams over DJ Moore.
Yeah, just quarterback related.
That's
just quarterback
It is
related.
a wide receiver 2 over a wide receiver 1, but from what we've seen, a few air balls from Baker, Mayfield, Sam Darnold, the same. They just haven't looked great over there in Panthers world. So we'll have to see what it looks like.
Adam Thielen last year he was very touchdown dependent.
Injured a fair bit too.
Yeah, so maybe a little bit of a downturn from him, but again,
I'm
proven.
avoiding.
You're avoiding?
Yeah, I do like the new Rams offense system they're going to be running over there with their former OC as their head coach now. But I'm just waiting on Thielen. I want to see more before I commit.
Hunter Renfrow? Raiders, massive year last year. Obviously, they bring in a guy called Devonte Adams. Might take a little bit of his shine away.
Yeah, and Waller has been hurt again, so I think he's got minor hamstring issues, which might help Hunter Renfrow for value. But I just think the way that new offensive scheme though as well. Josh McDaniels is over there. We'll have to see what that looks like.
I think he gets a ton of ball and is a steal there at 41st ADP for receivers.
The risk is that he won't. Maybe he gets a ton of ball, but the Raiders lacked touchdowns through the air last year, and we'll have to see. And if they get more, maybe a lot of that goes to Adams and a healthy Waller. So we'll have to see. He should still get a lot of volume.
The last one I want to ask you about, Christian Kirk got that big deal for, I think, third highest paid receiver in the league this year at Jacksonville. His ADP is 42 amongst receivers. And
I think anyone that picked Jacksonville wide receivers last year will feel will understand.
No guarantee.
Yeah. He's like, we need, there was other problems there, but we'll need Lawrence to probably take another step before you commit to any of those, especially that high. Yes, he got paid, but I don't think he was, he was second fiddle of Hopkins for a very long time. And Hopkins, even though he's got a 6-week ban, I think still floating around in that 40 to 50s kind of range.
Yep.
So, yeah, and he'll walk back into as a wide receiver 1 in that team.
100, future Hall of Famer. Marks, anyone didn't cover?
Or? Not
pretty
pretty happy with that. I think, do you reckon Chase Claypool would be someone to watch? Probably not in the draft, but
I'd
through the season?
I'd say no. He has been hurt. George Pickens is where it's at.
Yeah, the rookie. Yeah. Especially if you're in some kind of keeper setup.
Yeah.
He's been blown away training camp. He could be the next, big Steelers wide receiver, and they go through him pretty quick, and they draft him. Draft in the good guys, pump out the old vets, and they do that quite regularly. So, I think George Pickens fits that mould as the next big thing in Steelers Nation.
Here's the take-home message: we're nearly down to the 50th projected receiver to go in this draft. There's not much running back depth. There's a lot of receiver depth. You probably need to get some good running backs early, and then you can take a bit of a punt, perhaps, with your receivers later on.
Yeah.
Agreed?
You pick running back 1, 2, maybe even third round, and then you just pick wide receivers for the next 10. Yep. You're probably going to hit a few of those darts are probably going to land.
That's right.
And you're going to get value.
And your quarterback is Brucey from the longest yard. Yeah. Knew I shouldn't have had that popcorn.
You can take Matthew Stafford late.
I agree.
Yeah, there's lots of ways of strategy to structure it, but overall, there's lots and lots of depth in the wide receiver rooms because of the amount of talent that has been coming out from the last 3 drafts.
Let's go. We're nearly at real football games. Only a few weeks to wait.